from where she pursued her MA in early year. She is also hold MA in a teacher education from Aga Khan University Institute for Educational Development. She is heading the Academy Institute, the Academy Educational Network. Now over to you, Ms. Rehana.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Ameba. I hope I'm audible enough for everyone. Okay. All right. Yeah. So if can any everyone see my screen? All right.
Yes, we can
Okay.
see your screen, but we don't see you, Rehana.
You don't see me. Wait a second. Let me just sort this too. Yeah. So can you see me now too?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Before I begin, thank you so much for giving this platform. Thank you so much, Ms. Rafia Mudassir. And I'm sure and I'm following all the stories that are coming up with ITS, and you guys are doing a wonderful job. And after what Sheikh Saab has said, moving ahead with something very practical seems to be a little challenging, but I'll try my level best. And this is something, of course, the teachers need to uh, put in their efforts, put in their heart and soul, and that is how they will come up, I believe, with what we are trying to tell them over here. So, so what I'm going to talk about today is using data to drive instruction. And before I get into it, I'm trying to run the slideshow, but I'm unable to do so. Is there a specific trick to do so?
You can move to reading mode as well. It will be
Oh,
easier
okay.
for
I
you.
think,
Go to
yeah, I think, let me do that. Yeah, thank you. Helps that out. Thanks. So, together we are going to do today together. So, it's just not about you, it's together we will. So, together we will unpack the terms data and instruction in education. We are going to talk about the different forms of educational data and explore helpful tips from researchers and instructional coaches to effectively use data to drive instruction. All right, because I believe as teachers and as educators, it is extremely important for all of us to understand the significance of data, to understand how to, you know, unpack the data, because it is so important, and a teacher without a data, I believe, is incomplete. In fact, we all as humans as well, we derive a lot of things from data. How do we do that? I'll ask us. Just I was wondering, or have you ever wondered, and I want you to answer this question in the chat box, please. Like, have you ever wondered, like, why do you have to answer tons of questions when buying something online? Or what are you, when we are thinking something to buy, it starts appearing on our social media like Facebook? Or why do we get messages from different marketing or advertisement companies? So have you ever wondered, why does this happen? I'm looking at the chat box. I want you people to answer, like, why does this happen? Anyone, if anyone can come up with the answers with it.
they are just going to start.
Yeah, there's data shared with them. So data, yes. Marketers follow our history. Artificial intelligence promotion, because we search advertisements. Yeah, data again. They okay. So again, the word which is coming out is data. So what is actually data, right? Let's talk about this. What is data? So data, if I talk simple data, so data is just numbers, okay? But in the context of education, data is synonym for information. Data can be words, numbers, or observations that are collected systematically, usually for a specific purpose. So when we're talking about data in the terms of education when the teachers are collecting data. So of course that is for a specific purpose. It's just not कि हमने ऐसे ही data जो है ना collect कर रहे हैं, numbers collect कर रहे हैं, but it means something. So what does that mean? Okay, and why do we need data? So जो हमने पहला जो मैंने आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछा था कि when we are filling, when we are buying something, we put a lot of, they ask us a lot of questions, or बस हम सोच ही रहे होते हैं कि कुछ खरीदना है और वो अचानक से स्क्रीन पानी शुरू हो जाता है, तो व्हाट इज इट, दे आर यूजिंग डेटा, दे आर यूजिंग डेटा टू ड्राइव देयर मार्केटिंग campaigns, right? So how do we use this data in instruction for the education? But before moving to talk about data which drives instruction, we need to understand what is instruction in education. It's very simple. The purposeful, it
Correction.
includes, instruction includes your teaching strategies, instruction includes your the content, the schemes of work, the curriculum, your everything, the long-term plans, your lesson planning. This is all the part of instruction. What direction you are giving to it, how are you going forward with it, that is the instruction in education. Okay, right. But if we talk about the educational data, so now if I talk about data drives instruction in education, so what is educational data all about? If if anyone, if you, we all are teachers, right? So if you can write on the in the chat box, how do we get data? As a teacher, how do I get data of my students? What are the forms of getting data? If you can just write in the chat box. Attendance, yes. Admission form, results. Yeah, I was expecting the results to come, but Miss Rafia, of course, gave it a different direction. Asking questions. Yeah, result sheets, spread new sheets, test grades. Yes, portfolio observations. Excellent. Right. Yes. So result sheets. So since I knew this is going to be the first answer, I could anticipate that this is going to be the first answer. So yeah, student achievement data. So we get student achievement data from the samples of classwork, the copy work that is being done, or if I talk about what is being done right now is we use Google Classroom. So whatever assignments are coming on the Google Classroom, so of course that is one of the way to get data. Student portfolios or e-portfolios, if I talk about results of formal and informal classroom assessments, report cards, or large scale assessment results, like for example the O levels or A levels results, or the SSC or HSC results. So this is the student achievement data that we get. Now, coming on to the other student data. So, what Ms. Rafia wrote, like attendance sheet and the admission forms, they're equally important because they give us a different picture when we're talking. I'm sure we all are aware of the different domains that a human is comprised of, or the students are comprised of. Just the information of the cognitive development of the child, but there are other domains as well, affective domain of the child. So now, how do we connect those areas, those bits? So the data, for example, the attendance data, is the child completing the homework in time or not? Behavioral incident data. So we try, as teachers, we have this instinct with us that if a child is always very active in the classroom, but we are observing that the child is getting a little lousy in the classroom, so there's something that we can figure out, that there is something, and we try to reach the parents, and then we find out there's something wrong at the home, or there's something happening in the family. So this data is extremely important because that completes the child. Contextual data. which is not in the direct control of the teachers, like such as the linguistic background of the child or the gender or community or socioeconomic factors, are important when we are considering the planning of the child. When we are completing the planning and when we are deciding like how are we going to go about in the classroom. So for example, if 90% students in my class have uh, English as a third or fourth language, and teaching them constantly in English might be a difficulty or might become a barrier for the students' achievement. So how do I go about it? Which means I need to be bilingual. I need to have concepts translate, or I need to find other support factors in my classroom to support the students. So these are the three these are three areas that I have figured out over here, which are mentioned by the in the research as well. But these are not limited. There are other factors as well. There are other areas as well, because a child who is coming to us is a human. As if I recall to what Sheikh Saab has earlier mentioned in his presentation while he was talking about, okay, we are dealing with humans, and humans are not just made of numbers. Humans are made of emotions, humans are made of feelings. And as teachers as well, it's not always that we can make decisions based on how a child is performing a certain test. For example, in a specific social studies test or a maths test, we need to get a complete picture. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. We need to bring in all together. We have the portfolio, the profile of the child, the student profile, which is collected at the beginning of the year or sometimes in the middle of the year. We have parent teacher meetings. So this all is being done so that we can get relevant information from the parents as well. Sometimes we also ask parents questions like, what are the activities of the child at home? Because if he is having an immense amount of screen time, so it is of course going to hinder the focus or concentration of the child while the child is in the classroom. Or if I talk about the online classes, if the child is already taking a 3 or 4 hour online classes, and after that the child is again having uh, time to play Minecraft or Subway Surfers, or like having more time on screen is going to of course hamper their level of concentration. So how do we use that data while we are planning for our instruction in the classroom? So this is important. Data tells a story. How data tells a story? Like, for example, if I'm cooking something, right? And usually जब हम खाना बनाते हैं, we always take feedback from the family, or even if we don't, we take they share with us, right? घर में लोग शेयर करते हैं, आज सही बना, आज नमक ज़्यादा है, ये है, पिछली दफ़ा बनाया था तो सही बना था, इस दफ़ा अच्छा नहीं है, why don't you check this recipe or something like that. You gather this data, so when next time we get into cooking something, or like next time when we gather to do the same recipe, we try and take that feedback. We try to take that data and incorporate it to get the expected outcomes or the results, right? So, but can we rely on a single story? Just a single story. Can single story be beneficial? Can we just rely on a single story? When I say single story, I will again get back to uh, the test papers. So, can the exam results of the test paper tell us completely the child's achievement and performance? It will not. It cannot, because we always need to have different sources. We need to have data sources, and then only we can gather a complete picture. So, quantitative and qualitative data. So the quantitative data is the results that you are gathering, but the qualitative data is the admission test forms that are there, the the medical issues. I can see in the chat box someone has written the medical issues. So of course that also hampers. So if there's any medical issues, attendance of the child in the classroom, and if it's online and the child is coming in for the maths classes but is not coming in for English classes. So this all tells us a story. So the quantitative plus the qualitative data, we speak to the children, we observe them. So this helps us to, you know, this completes the story. This gives us a picture of how is a child, what is the child going to achieve, and how can we help and assess them, how can we work on the instruction in the classroom. Okay. And so when we're talking about student learnings, of course the conversation, as I mentioned, we talk to the children, we talk to the parents, we observe them, and then the production. So the production is what? Their tangible data that we have in hand, like their result sheets or the test papers, the quizzes they perform, the classwork and everything. Okay. But there are some lessons that as teachers we need to keep in mind. Okay, what are those lessons? Flying blind through large amounts of data doesn't work. So for example, if we are just gathering the data and it's too much of data, it's not going to help us. We need to be focused. We need to know why are we actually gathering the data. Is it because the students in my class last term didn't perform well in maths? So that is giving me a focus. But if I'm just getting data from everywhere, I'm talking to parents, I'm gathering admission forms, I'm gathering the attendance sheet, like gathering data from everywhere, but then I'm not being specific, I'm not analyzing the data, it's not going to help me then. I need to be focused. Like, why am I gathering this data? Why do I need this data? Okay. Teachers must decide what data are useful to the investigation. So as I mentioned, for example, if it's about the maths in my classroom, so the data that I'm gathering, so I'm sure uh, most of us practice midterm analysis, result analysis, final term analysis, or if we have quizzes, if we have in between the assessments that are going on. So there are analysis that are being done in different schools, so teachers do analysis to find out. There are analysis which are being done then teacher wise, section wise, level wise, to see if it's just a problem coming across in just one section. It is across the levels, across the sections, it is across the levels. So which means, what do we need to do then? We need to then look back to our planning. We need to look back to the curriculum. We need to look back to the vertical progression. We need to look back to the horizontal progression that we are doing. So that the analysis then tells us how do we need to go further about it. But if we are just gathering data, कि एक पूरी tabulation sheet बना दी है और tabulation sheet में सबके marks लिखे हैं, but if I don't use it, it's not worth it. For data to tell the story, I need to analyze it. I need to have a focus. I need to take that and feed it into my instruction. Then only it is going to give me the expected outcome. Yes. So, what are the helpful tips? What do researchers or instructional coaches tell us? What can we do about it? How should we go about it, right? So, there are certain questions that the teachers can consider. Okay. So, what do my students already know? So, while planning, for example, if you're planning for for a class, so what are the questions that you need to ask yourself before entering into the classroom? So most of us are starting the next academic year the coming week or the week after. So before getting the hands on the planning, these may be the certain questions that you can ask yourself, and these might come as handy and helpful for you. So what do my students already know? What can my students do? What learning gaps and misconceptions do my students have that interfere with their mastery of upcoming standard? How will I address misconceptions and close learning gaps so that students experience success with the upcoming standards? What will I do for students who already know the content? So, like the differentiated instruction, or the students who are the high achievers in their classroom, how do we challenge them? But now, starting when you're starting the next academic year, probably next week or so, how do you get this data? We can get this data through discussion with the former teachers. If the new batch is coming to me, so for example, I've never taught this batch before, so I can talk to the teachers who taught them before. I can take the data of or whatsoever modes or mediums were used for the assessment, were their assignments, were their presentations. So not getting into so much of it, but just having a discussion with the teacher on specific children or a group of children that she thinks would need supports or he thinks that would need support, or these are the ones who are, you will have to challenge them. Checking about the content with the teacher, what were the areas that she or he has already covered, so I don't need to get into it. Maybe I need to plan an advance topic on it, because sometimes when you get into the classroom and we start teaching, the students come up to us and they tell us, we have already done this, and then we are in middle of nowhere. And if I talk about myself, this had happened once with me, and I was middle of nowhere. I had to then come up with a different activity at that point in time and do that with the children. But if I would have prepared myself earlier, this would have not happened. So this data, like, would help you when you are getting into the online teaching or the blended learning next week or the week after. So it's important that you are start asking these questions now to yourself. Check for understanding. So this, the earlier discussion, that is the prior questions that you need to ask yourself before starting the instruction. So there's the pre what we say, that we have diagnostic tests for the students to know how much they already know. So that was the pre-assessment task that we need to do for us, for teachers. This is something that we need to have in the middle of the instruction, in the middle of teaching any unit, any concept. And there can be different ways of doing it. And I'm sure you plan quizzes in between the classrooms. You have on spot checks. While the students were physically in the classroom, we used to have the on spot checks. But right now, when the students are also online, we ask certain questions to them to, so we know how far they have reached, and then we move further. So this is the data that we are gathering from them, and then we move ahead. And the task that is required from teachers is to always have specific questions to ask from the students before the class. Always, as a teacher, have questions, so that in the middle of it, when we are in the middle of something, in a concept, we can ask those questions to the students, so we know, is it the good time to move ahead, or I need to stop, I need to think ahead, think further upon it, I need to brainstorm more ideas, or I need to look for more games or links which would help substantiate my teaching of the concept. Okay, and this one's my favorite. Okay, professional learning communities. For any school to function properly, effectively, not properly but effectively, it is important to have learning communities. But what is the purpose of learning communities? The purpose of learning communities is to sit together and discuss. But who is going to sit together, right? Teachers from grades 1 till O levels sit together and discuss and discuss the vertical planning. So if we are starting in grade 1, how are we moving on till grade 10? And then we get feedback from here sometimes in middle, like for example the teacher in grade 5 tells like if we do this in grade 3 or 4, this may help students in grade 5. If we omit this thing from here and insert this concept, for example the concept of plants, right, I'm just generally taking this concept for an example. So this, we should not have it in grade 4, but if we have it in grade 5, so when in grade 6 the students are mostly learning about botanical concepts, so it will help them over here. So having it in grade 4 and then not in 5 and then in grade 6, we will then again have to go from the basic. So it's better to have it in progression, have it in grade 5. This will fill in the gaps. And of course, the information that all the students have, the teachers have, and the data they have from the students. Because if I'm teaching grade 2, the one who is teaching grade 3 will, of course, get benefited because I'll be able to tell her what the students have done. And this vertical planning is extremely pertinent and significant when we're talking about this COVID stricken year. And now, when the students are going to the next academic year, if we have this vertical planning and if we have the vertical planning team who gets together and starts discussing, I'm sure most of you have done it, but if not, give a try because this is coming from research. This is coming from the instructional coaches who suggest, recommend that we should have vertical planning teams who sit together and discuss like what is important for us to fill in. Okay. And then horizontal planning teams. So it is the made up of the teachers who are teaching the same level. So for example, grade 3 teachers. So in grade 3, if there are 2 English language teachers, if there are 3 language teachers, they sit together and they discuss, they collaborate. This collaboration and cooperation will help them to, to strengthen their teaching, to strengthen their instruction, and to improve student learning. Unless we have uh, the professional learning communities within the schools, the data that we have, it will not be effectively utilized in the classrooms. So to have every, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, as already I mentioned to you, and you can see it in the picture as well. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. We need to put in every piece in place to have a complete picture of it. So the data that we get from different modes helps us to complete this picture. And you can imagine if a teacher of grade 1 is sitting with the teacher of grade 8, and when like everybody's sitting together and when they are, inserting their ideas, when they are sharing their analysis, what concrete thing or tangible ideas we are going to get. Okay. So this is, I believe, an extremely important idea. So to work on the lessons, like how to analyze the data, how to go about it, and how to involve our instruction based on the data, it is important that we come up with the specific goal. Why are we getting the data? From which sources are we getting the data? And why is it that we need it? So we need to be asking questions. We need to be asking questions in between the instruction, and then having learning communities will help us because it will help us, of course, to seek guidance from our colleagues as well. Okay, these are the references. And yes, any questions? So I'm here to answer the questions.
Yes, dear participants, you are most welcome to ask if you have any question with Ms. Rehana.
I have a question which is like in horizontal planning, how teachers of different subjects can be helpful when object is different. Okay. Have we heard of integrated planning? Right. And the subjects are different because we have made them different. But it's not different actually. Compartmentalize the learning. Think science, we think maths, we think social studies in this way. But if we all sit together and discuss, there are of course overlapping concepts and ideas which goes across the board. And if a science and social studies teachers, they both are sitting together, they can of course come up with a strategy. Like if, because we are learning so much about plants, but we are learning so much about plants in social studies as well. The rainforests and everything is there in social studies as well. So how can we connect the ideas, and how maybe we both can together take a lesson, or how maybe we both can give a project together. So the horizontal planning will of course help teachers teaching different subjects as well.
Another sentence is written here. Could you give an example of coordination between two subjects? Ji, Ms.
Yes,
Rehana, can you
I
please?
just gave, and I will give an example which is about English and maths. We are teaching students maths and English, and of course, maths is the language too. We cannot forego with this idea. And when we are talking about, for example, if we're giving students simplify the equation, or if we are talking to students about differentiate, most of the times the students struggle when they are unable to understand or comprehend the question. Why is this happening? Because they are not very clear with what is the language that needs to be unpacked over here. So if maths and language teachers are sitting together, the language commands that are important in maths, the language teacher can help the maths teacher in that, and they can complement each other in this way.
Yes, that's good. Thank you. I think rotation of team for vertical and horizontal planning is a helpful from research point of view. Yes, exactly. By Saira Rahim. Okay, I think people are really appreciating Ms. Rehana, the things and the way you have presented was very well. And definitely many things the teachers are doing right now, but they don't need the exact and the refined ways of doing the things. And that you have really explained in a very well manner. Thank you so much, Ms. Rehana, for being with us today in this International